So happy to be able to share this with all of you. This is absolutely one of my strongest passions, I would say, and one of the things that has definitely um, kept me going through my hardest times in life. Um, so yeah, Elliot, all right, you already said who I am, so I don't have to do that part. But I'll just say a little bit about why I'm, why this topic for me. Why did I want to share it with all of you? Um, First of all, I know that you all face challenging times on a regular basis, so that doesn't even feel like strong enough word for a lot of what we deal with. But I didn't discover this way of thinking about self-care till about 11 years ago. And at that point, I was about 5 years into my journey with my son. And I was at a women's retreat, my first one, and we were in a small group. And one of the other women in the group said to me, well, I was sharing a bit of my struggles, and she said, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And everything inside of me was like, no, no, I will not let that be my truth. And I want to wipe that off the face of the earth for anybody else who thinks that. So that was like a jolt into this work, actually. Thank you for the hearts, Cordelia. Yeah. It was, and it's such a common belief, right? And especially when we have kids who are struggling, I hear it all the time. And so I will say, in the past 11 years, I've gotten into thinking about self-care as a foundational part of my life, as opposed to something extra to get to when there's time, which there's never time. Um, so thinking of it that way and cultivating these practices that help me face life one moment at a time has really gotten me through the hardest times of my life. Um, and it's an ever-evolving relationship with self-care. This is like everything else we learn in ITC. It's not a once and done. It's every time you revisit it and think about it more deeply, you'll get something new and you'll learn more about yourself and self-care. So just keep that idea in mind as we head into this. And tonight, I'm just going to share a little bit about what's made a huge difference to me over these years. And what I know is that when times feel urgent, when we feel out of control, whether that's in your personal world or out there or both, um, when you feel overwhelmed and powerless, what we most need to do is to find a way to get grounded, to create some spaciousness, because those things constrict us. Um, and we need ways to tap into our own inner wisdom and guidance and resources. That's how we can get out of the external stress loop, because life is going to continue to life, right? And life is messy. It's going to keep coming at us. So what can we do to step back a little bit so that we can think more clearly, so that we can act more calmly and mindfully, or maybe not calmly, but mindfully, because sometimes calm isn't the appropriate response, but we can be more intentional. And I really look at this as a way to develop our own self-efficacy, to claim some agency in a world where so much feels out of our control. So that's part of what self-care is for me. And I will say what I've noticed is that the world's chaos, particularly right now, is echoing what many of us have lived through or are living through. It feels unpredictable. It feels relentless. It feels heavy. It feels scary. It feels uncertain. And that may be amplifying and exacerbating inside of you any feelings or struggles that you've already got going on. So I want to normalize that. You are not alone. There's some heavy vibes out there in the world, and they feed into our own personal experiences. It might feel like it's all too much. I mean, I've certainly felt that a lot. And I'm going to just throw out this idea that everything that you take in, you have to digest. So whether that's food or drink or information or what you're looking at, what you're listening to, it all has to come through you. And so think about that and think about the toll that your being gets put under. So to me, this is why we need to be thinking about self-care. And I didn't see everything in the chat, and I did save it because I want to get back to that later. But if you just want to look through there, some of the things that people said get in their way of self-care. Work, my thoughts, or negative thoughts. Me, not enough time. Time is not my own. I don't prioritize my own time. So there's different ways of looking at time, even, and how our relationship to it. I might do things that feel good, but they're not actually nourishing. So that's a key distinction too. Like, is this really self-care? Because sometimes what might look at like numbing out might actually be the smartest thing you could do, and other times maybe not. So we're building that relationship with ourselves so we can get to know, is this really self-care? Is it not? I saw somebody said that they're pretty good with physical exercise, but not so much the rest and reset part. Guilt, I fully expected to see that one, because especially if you're dealing with people who are struggling, people in your family, clients that you serve, it can feel selfish or self-indulgent to take time for you. So that is also very common. The busyness of life, just the everyday tasks. Absolutely. Saw somebody say their phone, and yes, I have learned to pay attention to how my phone makes me feel. And I actually can notice the shift in my energy when I've spent too much time on it or it's nearby, and how it interferes with personal connection with other people. So I'm so glad that that one came up, because that's really something great to pay attention to. I saw fatigue. And yes, sometimes we are just so worn out and exhausted and fatigued, we can't even think about self-care. If I asked you what you could do for yourself, you're like, I have no idea, because I'm just depleted. Anybody relate to that? Ever? Okay, I see a few hands. Thank you. So what we're going to do tonight, I want to give you some simple ideas and practices, because if I were to overwhelm you with big, heavy things to take on, that's probably not going to be helpful if you're feeling exhausted, depleted, burned out, and it's all too much. So I want to offer some simple ideas, some simple practices where you can take care of yourself in the moment. Because I think that's the other thing. We often think of self-care as a thing I'm going to schedule. Saturday, I'm going to go to yoga class. Wednesday, I've got a massage. Tuesday, I'm going for a walk with a friend. How can we make self-care part of your moment-to-moment, everyday existence? That is my goal. I'm going to invite you into some reflection to help you connect with your own wisdom, create your own plan. We'll have just a few little questions that you can take away from into the next week, thinking about how you might handle this. And of course, this is not one size for everyone, right? One size doesn't fit all with self-care as well. So you're going to create what works for you. It will be very different than what works for somebody else. We're going to have time for questions at the end. Just because I want to get through as much as I can. I don't know how much talking interaction we'll have throughout our time, but there may be some. We'll see how I do in my pacing. So I want to just also say that true self-care begins with awareness. It begins with cultivating a new compassionate relationship with yourself. It's an awareness of what your life is too. And I want to say it begins when we can face the reality that's here, as opposed to staying in the, how did this happen? This shouldn't be, which is natural and not necessarily helpful, right? I find it much more helpful to get to the point of saying, okay, I don't like it, but this is what's here. So now what? And when we can take that stance, now we're standing on the ground of reality. We're not spinning in that place of, how did we get here? It shouldn't be, blah, blah, blah. So we want to get grounded in, okay, this is what's here. And I'll tell you how I came to this. I was at a retreat with Tara Brach, the meditation teacher, and she asked this question: are you at war with reality? And I thought, Absolutely. Because who wouldn't be? I do not want what is going on in my life right now. But it also made me really start to think, ooh, that war with reality takes a lot of energy. I think that's the other reason I think it's part of self-care, because the minute we can kind of lay down that burden of resisting and settle into some semblance of acceptance, even if not liking, we're better able to move forward. You may have heard the idea that change happens with addition, right? I think I've heard it in some of these trainings. And that addition doesn't erase old habits, old ways of thinking, old ways of being. It's not going to erase the chaos. Okay. None of this is going to change the circumstances of your life, but hopefully it's going to give you some tools to be with those circumstances in a healthier, more grounded, more centered way. And again, adding in might initially feel like more overwhelm. Okay, are you kidding me? I just told you I don't have time in my day to even think about self-care, and now you want me to add in. And so I'm going to suggest, what if we think about adding in more space, more quiet, more positive connections, more practices that bring peace and clarity, not more to-dos, because that's a way to add in as well. And when you add those things in, somehow miraculously, space opens up in our mind, space opens up in our day even, and it can be pretty wonderful. So I want to just take us into a little bit of centering just to land. That was already quite a bit of talking from me. So I'm going to invite you to just take your seat, to feel yourself in your chair, feel your feet on the ground. And this practice is part of self-care. So we're going to feel your foundation, the feet resting on the floor, your seat in the chair. Let that chair hold you. Feel your breath. It's a good time for me to pause and take a breath as well. You may want to put a hand on your heart, as I just did. I do this all the time as a way to bring myself into myself. It's a self-compassion gesture that just helps calm the nervous system. Maybe you put a hand on your belly, maybe one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, both hands on your belly, whatever feels good to you, and no hands anywhere if it doesn't feel good. Just feeling yourself a little bit centered here. Have your eyes closed, or you could take a soft gaze. If you're feeling really unsteady, it could be helpful to find like the table in front of you, something that is stable and steady, and cast your gaze there. Let's just take a moment to tune in. How's your body in this moment? You don't need to change anything, but is there anything that you might do to make yourself a little bit more comfortable? I would invite you to make those adjustments. And we tend to notice what's wrong. We look for the pain or the ache or the stiffness. But can you also notice like a neutral place in your body that's also here? Maybe even something feels really good. What's going on with your emotions in this moment? Just take stock. No judgment. Just allowing whatever is here to be here. And then noticing the quality of your thoughts in this moment. And you don't have to stop them. They're just going to come and go on their own anyway. But are they busy? Are they peaceful? Are they pulling you to something else that you need to do? You shouldn't be wasting your time here. Just notice. I'm curious. Coming into this place where your feet are, you come into your body, come into your breath. The body and the breath are only here in the present moment. The mind is brilliant at taking us into the past or the future. So if we come back to the body, come back to the breath, and we simply be, for right now, there's nothing else you need to be doing, nowhere else you need to be. And with each breath, you can begin again. Let's just sit for a few moments in silence. If you drift away, great, you just woke up. Just notice that and come right back to the breath and the body. I invite you just to take 3 more breaths at your own pace. If you'd like to have an audible sigh out on any of those, please feel free. Sometimes that can be really helpful just to release whatever's pent up in us. And after your 3rd breath in your own time, maybe blinking the eyes open gently if they were closed, coming back into this space. And I don't know if you have any wiggles that you, my body wants to wiggle a little bit. So if you want to wiggle at all, or if you're feeling wound up, like just shaking your hands, brushing off, that can be really helpful. Sometimes we just kind of come at this time of the day where there's a lot of stuff been sticking to us throughout the day. We just got to shake it off a little bit. That can be a really nice self-care practice for your nervous system. I'm going to give us another one that we can do. And this is to just say the word voo, like a cow says moo, only with a V. And it's going to be an extended voo. Okay, so first we're going to just exhale all the air out. We're going to inhale, and then you're just going to say voo until you run out of breath, and then you're going to take another breath in and do it again. Voo. Let's do one more. Just coming back to your natural breath. And just notice, did you notice anything from that? Some people may, some people may not. Feel free to put it in the chat if you'd like. That can be very calming for your nervous system. So I'll offer that up to you. I'm also going to offer 4 B's of self-care. We've already talked about them. Body, getting into your body. Breath. Again, body and breath only here in the present moment. So all of that isn't really here is not in the present moment, or you wouldn't be sitting here with me right now. Like if there was a fire raging or blood gushing or something that you had to attend to urgently, you couldn't be here right now, but here you are. So in this moment, what can we find? So body, breath, B, just capital B-E, just give yourself time to just take that beautiful pause that we know about, just be. And the idea of begin again, in meditation, it's okay, we can come back to the breath. We come back to the breath. We always can begin again. That is a super helpful tool to take into your life. So when you've had a moment that you're not the most proud of, perhaps, or something that you want to, shift, great. You can always begin again. So just reminding ourselves that every single moment is a chance to begin again. Nothing is set in stone. The minute it's over, it's over. We can move on. And I'm just going to ask you to think for yourself, what's your intention for this evening or whatever time of day it is for you? But what's important to you about this topic? Why are you here? You're taking an hour and a half in a very busy life in which you don't have any time, and here you are. So why? And you might want to jot that down, just don't make it harsh, just a simple noticing, like my intention is, I don't know what it might be. Somebody's felt a VU vibration through their body. Felt like play. It was harmonizing. And the play was lovely. Oh my gosh. Well, we need a lot of play. Play is self-care too. And that's the other thing. Let's just start to broaden our ideas about what self-care is. So as you're writing your intention and thinking about that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what self-care is, the way I think about it. And I already think I said it. I see it as the foundation from which everything else comes. Without it, it's going to be a lot harder. Not going to say you can't do it, but it gets easier if you've got a solid foundation of self-care instead of letting it be the icing on the cake. The thing I'm going to get to when the stars align and the kids are okay and work is in order and I'm caught up on my to-do list, which, by the way, you will never catch up on your to-do list. So what if we make this the foundation because it matters that much? It's not something to get to later on. This is the thing that will sustain you. That I know from experience. And now is the time to begin. Do not wait till the kids are in treatment, till this is sorted out, till the mortgage is paid off, till whatever. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be time consuming. So let's get started now. I'm going to share with you two definitions. The first one that I heard was on that women's retreat with Renee Trudeau. And her definition of self-care is it's the art of attuning and responding to your needs and desires moment by moment. And Elliot, if I can ask you to copy and paste that one into the chat. So it's Renee Trudeau's definition, the art of attuning and responding to your needs and desires moment by moment. We could spend an hour unpacking that. But I just could point out a few key things. Number one, it's an art. It's not something that we were taught. Most likely, if I have yet to meet a person who said, yes, my parents taught me about self-care from the time I was a little child and told me I should absolutely put myself before everybody else. If you are that person, I would love to talk. Most of us were told to be nice to other people, to think of everybody else. And that's kind of the conditioning we've grown up in. So it is an art, doesn't come naturally. We feel guilty about it. Attuning and responding to your needs and desires. Holy cow. I have needs and desires. That's okay. Yes, we all have needs and desires. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And then the attuning and responding. So attuning says, I notice my needs and desires, which many of us do. We know what we need. But the responding piece is key because often we notice those needs and then we push them aside. We say, that's not the important thing right now. I have to do this first or whatever. And that's going to include simple things like, I really need to go to the bathroom or I really need to eat lunch. I know people who have ignored those needs because work was more important. So since taking on that definition from Renee back in 2014, I've played with it, I've evolved, I've thought about it, I've worked with it in different ways, and I've shortened it. My definition now is being true to and gentle with yourself one moment at a time. Both of these definitions have that idea of this moment, this moment, this moment, not future, but right here, right now. So Elliot, if you could put in my definition as well, that would be great. So let's talk about needs and wants for a minute. You cannot tend to them. You cannot respond to them unless A, you are allowing them, right? So that's going to take some self-compassion. That's going to take admitting that we have needs and desires. Because often I run into people who are like, no, I'm good. I don't need anything. What do you need? I'll take care of you. So we kind of deny our own needs and wants and desires. Um, so we need to understand that all people have them and give ourselves permission to have them as well. B, we have to know what they are. And again, if you're in that cyclone of everything else that's going on, you probably haven't had time to pause and think about, huh, what are my needs and desires? I don't know. I have no idea. So there's that self-awareness piece, getting to know your own needs, because often we know other people's needs better than we know our own. Our own. Yeah, that's a word. And we know maybe what they like better than what we like. I really had to work with that. Honestly, this is like such a silly example, but I noticed even in grocery shopping, I would be like, well, my husband liked these potato chips, so I'm going to get those. Until one day it occurred to me that I could actually get the ones that I like as well, even if they're different from his. Silly example, but also reflective of how often maybe I'm catering to other people instead of taking care of myself. Not that potato chips are taking care of myself, but maybe they are. So I want to offer you now just a quick check-in, which will help to inform your needs and wants. So I'm going to give you 4 little questions, which I will pop in the chat after I say them to you, but this might be a good time to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and just take in that question, sit with it for a moment, and then allow that answer to bubble up. Okay, don't start with your mind thinking that you know what you're going to say. Allow the answer to arise within you because we want to tap into this wise part of you. So the first question is simply, how do I feel? And that could be in this moment or this moment in time. Don't overthink it, just see what comes up. It does not have to be profound. How do I feel? And then go ahead and jot that down. This is what's true for you in this moment. It's just a snapshot in time. That answer might be a physical response, it could be an emotional response. Lots of options. How do I feel? I'm going to go through these quickly because I really want this to be a quick check-in. I want to show you that this doesn't have to take hours and hours to get this deep awareness. So the next question is, what do I need? Again, this moment, this time in my life, what rises up when I take a moment to pause and ask, what do I need? I invite you to just take your time with that, allow it to arise and write down whatever comes up. There's no right or wrong. You can't possibly get this wrong. How do I feel? What do I need? And then the third question, what do I want? Again, tuning in. Sometimes people ask me, what's the difference between a need and a want? I can't really answer that for you because it could be the exact same thing. So what's true for you? You know, I would say a need is something that is like non-negotiable, and a want could be that nicer thing, that icing on the cake. I would love world peace. So whatever comes up for you, write that down. I'm going to give you a fourth. Which actually came from a woman that I've been to a lot of my retreats, and she just claimed this. So this last question is, what do I require? And some people have resonated with the strength of that, because if need is non-negotiable, what do I require is really non-negotiable. And when you can take that stand for yourself and be honest with yourself about it, you're going to definitely improve your odds of getting that in your life. And again, that could be as simple as 7 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, or it could be, I don't know, something a little more luxurious, something more fun. I require laughter every day. I'm not going to be okay if I don't have these things. So offer that to you as a way that you can check in with yourself. And you could do this literally in a minute. So even if somebody had just made a request of you, you take that pause and you say, give me a minute. And just internally run through that. Like, how am I feeling? Because if we can start to listen to our body is often a great GPS for, oh, this is a no, this is a not yet, this is not right now, or this is a yes. You start to get aware of that, or I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I don't have it in me to do this for you. So what am I needing in this interaction? What do I want? You could do this before you go into a meeting. You could go do this before you have a conversation with your loved one. But you're getting centered in yourself, which is going to carry you into those encounters in a much more strong position. And it requires that pausing and tuning in. Pause is gold in so many ways. We know that with our loved ones, our people that we serve, but with ourselves as well. So I want to just share some ideas around self-care, some simple practices. And number one is that pause. That is my favorite self-care tool, without a doubt. The next one kind of goes along with that, and that is the idea of intention. And particularly if you can begin your day with intention before you just jump out of bed and run into your day habitually like you always do. What if you lay there for a minute and you just reflected on something you're grateful for, or you thought about, oh, what quality, what am I going to need today? And maybe you're building that intention of yourself of like confidence. I'm going into this scary thing. I know I'm going to need some confidence, or seeping in peace for a moment, or doing a little bit of reading or journaling before you start your day. That can make all the difference in how your day unfolds. And so often we're just on autopilot. So just interrupting that spin cycle that we live in and saying, okay, just let me give myself a moment before I go into my day. That could be hugely helpful. The other one, which I'm not so great with, honestly, is intentionally ending your day. Um, I have heard it said that it's a really good idea to kind of be off screens for a couple hours before you go to sleep, to eat your dinner early enough that you're not trying to digest when you're trying to go to sleep. Certainly what you're thinking about as you're going to sleep might affect your well-being and your state of mind. And many of us go to bed thinking, oh gosh, I didn't do that thing that I was supposed to do, or I can't believe I said that to my friend. I hope she'll forgive me, or really worried about my kid, or whatever, right? We're focused on all these things that are troubling us, and we're struggling, or we didn't do right, or we're beating ourselves up. And what if instead you went to bed and you lay there and you thought about 3 things you appreciate, 3 things you're grateful for, in yourself would be lovely. Most people don't do that. They think about things outside of themselves, but maybe like 3 things I really appreciate about myself today. I handled this well. Now, build up that reservoir within yourself by witnessing yourself and sending yourself off to sleep with those kinds of thoughts, and just notice what it does for your sleep. Notice what it does for your energy. Notice if you notice it in the morning. That's something to play with. I'm going to offer that up. Attention is another thing to pay attention to. So we've got intention and attention, and where you place your attention matters. What are you giving your attention to? My meditation teacher has said that, we are now in an attention economy, that everybody is vying for our attention, and they want to hook you and they want to keep you, right? So if you can take back your agency and say, okay, nope, not going to look there right now. I am the gatekeeper of my energy. I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to be intentional and conscious of where I'm directing my energy and my attention. So notice that. Just begin to think about, what am I letting myself take in, and is it too much? Or is it manageable? Some of you might love books as much as I do and have a lot of books on heavy topics, perhaps. Like I've gone on away for the weekend or something, and I had to actually think, okay, I am not bringing the trauma books, the addiction books, the recovery books this weekend. Like I get to have the novel and just lighten up for a little bit. So I am guessing most of you love to learn and grow, and you're doing stuff that you really care about, and you want to just keep developing and improving. And it's easy to get into treating ourselves like a self-improvement project. And okay, growth is great, but are we beating ourselves beyond what we really have the capacity for? So it's something to think about. And I'm going to say gratitude is the antidote to the negativity bias. We're all wired to look for what's wrong, what's scary, what's bad, what we need to be on alert for. That is hardwired in us as human beings. And the way that we can begin to reprogram the brain is to start to look for things that we're grateful for. And I always say gratitude has changed my experience of life. And the key is, it hasn't changed my life. There's things that have happened in my life that I wish hadn't happened. There are daily events that happen, and yet I can still find gratitude every day. And my brain is getting accustomed to now looking for those things. I also look for beauty every day. For me, that's going out and just taking a few pictures of flowers or clouds or something beautiful in a building even. You can do it however you want, but if you start looking for beauty, you start looking for gratitude, you start looking for wonder, that childlike quality of a sunset, it happens every day, as one of my friends reminded me, but they're never the same. And there's something magical about that. It's the stars at night, lying in the grass and looking at clouds and finding shapes like you used to do when you were a kid. These are ways to start to counter that heaviness in our brain and start to build some new pathways that are looking for those things. Another word that I know some of you know is glimmers. And this is a term that was coined by Deb Dana, who's a clinical social worker. She wrote a book called The Polyvagal Theory in Therapy. But she said, glimmers are these tiny, seemingly insignificant moments when you feel a sense of joy, pleasure, peace, and gratitude. They're often catalyzed by simple daily things like petting an animal, taking a hot shower, listening to the rain outside your window. They're not grand experiences. They're just these tiny little micro moments that begin to shape our system in very gentle ways. So I saw, as I was looking at this, they're the opposite of triggers. So if you think of triggers as those things that activate us and get us worked up, glimmers are the things that settle everything down. And I had a chance to sit with a dog yesterday. I was waiting at my acupuncture appointment and her standard poodle was there. She just came and lay down with me. And I was like, oh, just petting this dog just calmed me down and brought me right into the present moment. Being with a little child. I have a friend who has a granddaughter, and she's like, there's nowhere else I can be but in the present with this little almost 2-year-old. They're plopping down and exploring and doing their things. So find those things that bring you joy, peace, gratitude. Okay, the name of the therapist in the book, I have it on I'm going to copy it and put it in here. Hold on. And I don't know anything about it really other than that. So I can share it with you, but I just love that idea of glimmers. So the other idea I would offer up to you is to look for mini moments of self-care throughout your day. So like 5 minutes here and there. Where can you do something that is truly nourishing, truly nurturing, fills you up, rebuilds the energy, rebuilds the resources. We all have heard we can't give from an empty cup, but do we actually take the time to refill throughout the day? And if you think about your car, you're not going to expect it to keep going when the gas tank is getting low, 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 or your cell phone battery you plug in when it gets down to 20%. But when it's us and our tank is getting low, 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 or our battery is down to 20%, very often we keep pushing through. Like, right? We're superhuman. We can do this. We're going to go until we end up burnt out. So we want to use self-care proactively so we don't get to the point where our body has to take us out and say, okay, now you have to rest. We want to actually give it a chance. I want you to look for baby steps that you can take towards self-care. So if it's something new that you're doing, don't expect to make a 180-degree shift in, I've never meditated in my life, but now I'm going to meditate 7 days a week for an hour a day. No, let's pull that back. Let's go for what's like a 2-degree shift. I'm going to meditate for a minute a day, 3 times a week. That will help, believe it or not. So celebrate every step forward, even if it's especially the tiny ones. Don't be looking for the big grand things. I'm going to invite you to lighten your load. Are there shoulds that you are carrying that you could let go of? That possibly nobody else has placed upon you but yourself. I should have a house that is clean all the time. I should serve my family fresh vegetables 19 times a day. I should, what are those shoulds that you could possibly consider letting go of? Also, are there things that you're carrying that you could delegate to other people? Can you ask for help? It's very vulnerable, but it's a beautiful skill to develop. You might ask yourself, what is uniquely mine to do? Like you can't do it all, but okay, this thing, yes, I do have to do this. It's not something I can delegate to somebody else. Yeah, stop shooting all over yourself. Thank you. Yeah. So what is uniquely mine to do is a really great question because so many of us want to do it all. We want to save the world. We want to save our family. We want to do all the things for ourselves. And it's simply too much. So instead of that, start choosing more intentionally, like, okay, how am I going to engage with life today? Which is the next thing I have on here is rather than trying to save the world or put out all of the fires, how would you like to engage with the world or engage with life today? Because spoiler alert, it's impossible to save the world. And you alone cannot carry all of the burdens. So those are some ways you might lighten your load. I'll also invite you to think about looking for fun, delight, joy as self-care. I actually set a goal for myself around that, I've committed to once a week, I'm going to create some space for something fun. And that doesn't come naturally for me. That's requiring me to think about what is fun for me. And you might be thinking, but how? What would that be? So something to get curious about. If it's not natural for you, start noticing those things that you truly enjoy. There is one phrase I picked up from Renee Trudeau over the years, and that is, I will not abandon myself. That one landed in me the first time I heard it. I felt it was like putting a stake in the ground for myself. And, some people have said, oh, can you rephrase that in a positive way? And to me, I'm like, no, no, because I like the force of I will not abandon myself. So what does that mean for you to not abandon yourself? I invite you to just think about that. Sometimes for me, self-care looks like picking one small task that can be completed from start to finish. A load of laundry that I can wash and dry and fold and put away. If I'm feeling overwhelmed and like everything is just too much, sometimes just taking one thing like that, and that might even sound like too much. Maybe it's cleaning one countertop or one drawer, breaking it down into something doable, I guess is what I'm saying. That could be self-care. Because if it's weighing on you and you feel like, oh, I'm never going to get this done, okay, do that. And then this idea of let me love myself at least as much as I love you. And that almost makes me want to cry. Just because I know how fiercely I love my people. And I know how fiercely you love your people. And how you will do anything for them. And so what if you took on that idea of let me love myself at least as much as I love you? Can you do that without feeling guilty? Because that's not saying I'm not going to love you anymore. It's all about me now. There can be a little black backlash of that. If you have gone decades without taking care of yourself and all of a sudden you start doing it, you might notice some resentment, some other things percolating. So be aware of that. And just remember that you've kind of created this condition over your life. You've trained the people in your world what to expect from you, how to treat you. And if you start changing those rules, there might be some pushback. And you might be a little bit bitter that you waited this long to get going with it. So something to be aware of. But you can love other people and love yourself too. You can take care of other things and other people and take care of yourself too. So I already talked about that idea of kind of feeling into your body and, is this a whole body yes or no? Or an inkling even. Follow those. But start learning to listen to yourself. I'm going to give you 5 key steps for self-care, which we've already gone through these, but number 1 is the pause and tuning in. Number 2 is asking the question. If you're trying to figure something out, what do I need in this moment? What do I want? Listening. So taking a little time to actually listen, and we can pop these in the chat too. Elliot, I think these are on your sheet. If they're not, let me know and I'll grab them. Then respond. And then number 5 is to pause and acknowledge yourself for doing the thing that you said you were going to do before you move on to the next thing on your list. Thank you. Because so often we don't even bother to notice. And if we're doing something new, we want to build up that behavior, right? Within ourselves, we want to acknowledge ourselves. We need that affirmation instead of just going, oh, yeah, that wasn't enough. And now I got to do this next thing. So this is being intentional with cultivating some self-care. Let's see. Doing great on time. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. And this was just a suggestion I saw in an online group that I'm in of some things that you could do when you're feeling some certain kind of ways, which will make more sense when you see it in the chat here in a second. But I thought it was helpful. I actually printed it up. So, if you're overthinking, it can be really helpful to write, whether that is making a list or just journaling or scribbling, scrawling out. You get it out of your head and you get it down on paper. If you're feeling anxious, take some time to breathe, maybe putting that hand on the heart. Again, maybe shaking off is what you need to do. If you're really jacked up, you got to get that energy out. So this is all in the chat. Don't worry about like taking a ton of notes here. You're feeling tired, rest, or maybe I didn't put it in there yet, did I? No, I did not. I'm sorry. I'm reading it. You can't see it. Now you can. If you're feeling sad, you could move your body. That energy, that emotion could get stuck. So if you move, maybe that sadness will shift. You could also just let yourself cry, which is actually a very natural physical release that your body needs. Probably the only one that we apologize for and explain and tell people we're going to do it ahead of time, as opposed to like laughing or sneezing. So let yourself cry. If you're feeling stressed, maybe you put on a good song and you dance, or you get out in nature. And just for me, looking at the sky or a tree or a bird, actually, I did not know this, but somebody was saying, one of the reasons that listening to the birds is so calming to our nervous system is because inherently we know that if the birds are chirping, they're okay. The world is not in danger. Well, the natural world is not in danger as far as they know. So it helps to soothe us. Um, if you're feeling angry, maybe you listen to some music. Maybe you scream. And one of my favorite ways to scream is to get in the car. So I'm not going to scare anybody. And I take a drive and I let out a really primal car scream. Because again, that energy is there. It needs release. You could punch a pillow, something to let that out so that it's not eating you up inside. You're feeling burnt out. Maybe you read, maybe you need to rest. And if you're feeling overstimulated, and we're back to the phone, unplug. Put your phone on silent, put it out of sight, get off of social media, get off of the news. Stop adding to your stimulation. You can do those things. All right, back to you all now. I've given you some ideas, some thoughts of what self-care might look like. What I didn't talk about is the idea of holistic self-care. So oftentimes we think of the body and the physical needs, right? We know we need to get enough sleep, we need to eat right, we need to hydrate. I like to think of self-care as body, mind, heart, and spirit. And yes, they are all part of the same organism, but sometimes it helps to look at them distinctly like that. Um, Body, mind, heart, and spirit, so that we aren't missing something. We're not only focused on the physical. So if you think about those areas, where did I write this? Hold on. There we go. So for your body, all of these things can be cared for in an active way or a more restful way. So with your body, maybe sometimes what you need is a nap, and other times what you need is a run or a walk. With your mind, it could be you want to do some meditation to kind of settle everything down, or it could be I'm going to learn a new language. Sometimes the mind needs to be challenged as part of self-care. Your emotions, your heart, this is about your relationships. It's about your feelings. So again, it could be simply being with your feelings. I have heard it said that if you stay with an intense feeling for 90 seconds, it will shift on its own. The reason they don't shift is because we spin the stories around them. So you might play with that. Like, what if I just let myself really be sad right now? Because I really am, or I'm really angry right now. Emotions could also be kind of doing an assessment of your relationships. And are there certain relationships that maybe need to be pruned or maybe need to be cultivated? Sometimes I've hung out with some people and we just had such a good time and laughed, and I'm like, man, I want more of that in my life. There's a lot of heavy. I need some more lighthearted, joyful play friends. So think about those things. Emotional, the heart could also be reaching out for support, whether that's enlisting a therapist or a friend for help. And then when we think about spirit, to me, this is not necessarily spiritual, though it could be for you. I just think of spirit as that life force that's beyond the physical. So it's kind of the mystery, can't necessarily be defined, but there's an energy, right? There's something there. So that could be fed through prayer or meditation or nature, or it could be fed by lying in the grass, but sometimes your spirit is fed by giving generously to other people or being of service, but only if you're filled up first. So thinking about those four areas, I'm going to ask you a few questions. And you can do this however you like. Because I've posed this before and I said for each of those areas, think about these questions, and people have ended up finding out it's the same thing across the board. So the question is, what fills you up, energizes you, or enlivens you? So you could think of that in terms of your body. You could think of that in terms of your heart, your mind. I will put this in the chat. But think about what fills you up, energizes, or enlivens you, and just jot down some ideas. This is where you start to kind of create your own, hey, these are some things maybe I'll try. We're going to hear from you soon because I'm ready to hear some more voices. Some wisdom from the room. And really, we're going to touch on this quickly. I would say leave room. This is something you can always revisit and add on to. So we're looking at what fills you up, energizes you, or enlivens you. So the other side of that, of course, is what calms, heals, or brings you peace. Body, mind, heart, and spirit are those areas that we're thinking about. Oops. Just getting a few ideas for now. Then I'd ask you to notice, is there one area that's calling for your attention right now that really needs more attention than maybe the other three? And if so, is there one action that it would have you take? And that action could be a shift in your mindset. It could be inaction. Again, the adding on doesn't have to be more onerous. So just tune in. Is there an area that's calling for my attention? And is there one action it would want me to take? To the extent that's possible, we're shifting out of the head, the mind thinking, and we're tapping this wisdom within. The other question, sorry, I know I'm going quickly through this, but is there one area that if you tended to that would affect all of the others? Because sometimes we have a really strong sense of like, oh yes, if I took care of my nutritional needs for my body, all of a sudden my mind's going to be clearer, my emotions will be less erratic, so think about that. Or if I take care of my spiritual life, the spirit energy, I'll have more energy to think about those other things that otherwise feel too overwhelming. As you're finishing that up, let me see. For you all, gave me the opportunity to notice self-care in a new way, which I thought was pretty cool. And that was how it maps on the wheel. So I'm going to put that in the chat. Just, you can keep answering your questions or listen to me or whatever, or read it along. But so self-awareness is clearly a huge part of self-care. Getting to know yourself, developing this loving, respectful relationship, tapping that inner wisdom, honoring what matters to you, right? So this is a great place to honor your values, truly for yourself. Self-compassion. It requires deep self-compassion, and it also builds your capacity for compassion and self-compassion. So there's a bonus one. Willingness. It requires a willingness to be uncomfortable, because if you start prioritizing your time more, you might possibly be disappointing somebody else, right? You might be saying no to things that you typically say yes to make your own needs and self a priority. One size doesn't fit all. Your wisdom will guide the practices that work for and support you. And check them out. You may have some practices that you've been doing for a long time. Just take a pause and say, is that still working for me? Or does it need to be tweaked or replaced or switched up in any way? Behaviors make sense. It's really hard to think about yourself when someone you love is struggling or when the world's on fire, or both, or you serve people who are struggling. Ambivalence. There may be, I know this is true for me, there are changes that you know you should make, you want to make, and you also don't want to make them at the same time, right? So we have that within us as well. And then around action, if you're thinking of communication, we can think about changing the way that you talk to yourself. So instead of belittling yourself, berating yourself for not taking better care of yourself, how about lovingly inviting yourself into some of this? Acknowledging when you do the hard thing, when you did something that was good for your being. Behavior, reinforce yourself for making the changes you want to make, those tiny little baby steps. And practice. And I've said this about self-care forever. It is a practice. It is not a once and done thing. It is practicing over and over again. It is not about getting perfect or even right. It is just trying things, seeing how they work for you and what lands. So I thought that was really cool when I saw how it just fit into the wheels so beautifully. And I had to bring that into the ITC group. All right. 3 more questions for you. This is kind of your commitment to yourself as we finish up our time here. So thinking about the week that's coming up, what is one promise you can make to yourself for this week? And I would invite you to treat that the same way that you would treat a commitment to a friend, a family member, a client, a patient, whatever, whoever you work with. What is one promise I will make to myself for this week? And if you write it down, again, you have a better chance that maybe you will actually do this thing instead of forgetting 5 minutes after the call, like I would. You can go back to it and say, oh, yes, I promised to myself. And you might even put it on your calendar if it's a particular, if you want to block out some time to make sure that your time doesn't get squeezed out by everybody else, which can so easily happen. And the next thing I'm going to ask you to consider is, what is one permission you can give yourself this week? I don't like permission from other people, but I love giving myself permission. So granting yourself permission, it's often necessary to really be intentional, especially if you're doing something that feels uncomfortable. Two more. One that you're very familiar with. But I added in one before that. What would be fun or relaxing for me this week? You know, again, even if it's 5 minutes, maybe I'm going to sit and watch cat videos. I'm going to call a friend who always makes me laugh. I'm going to lie down for 5 minutes and close my eyes. I just learned that if you lie on your belly and you close your eyes are the sense that takes in the most from the world. So you're shutting that down, and it's actually super soothing to the nervous system. 3 minutes, lie on your belly, close your eyes. And the last one, of course, is how can I be kind to myself this week? Because it wouldn't be ITC if we didn't ask that before we left. We will stop there, and I will invite anyone who would like to share anything, any insights, any takeaways, your promise, your permission, anything that bubbled up for you, and or any questions that you might have. Yeah, let's open the floor. Hand off the mic, as Ken says. Tracy. There we go.
Thank you, Barb. This was pretty amazing. And I had a realization going through this, and that was that I broke my leg the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And up until that point, I thought I was doing a pretty good job with self-care. And for the first 2 weeks of not being able to put any weight on this leg as it healed, I was doing pretty good. And then 2 weeks in, I don't know what is about a 2 week thing, but I kind of sunk into a really deep depression and started to realize that I had put all my self-care eggs in one basket, pretty much one basket. And that was the physical exercise, which was now something I could not do. And so my intention is to be more intentional about incorporating a lot of more of these things into my life and doing. I'm doing a better job of journaling. I'm doing a better job of meditation. And it was a real eye opener. And when all of a sudden you can't take care of that, when that part of it is gone, and you cannot do anything about that, it was pretty upsetting, but it was a really good lesson for me. And this has come at a really, really good time as well. And I thank you for the wisdom of your experience and hard earned. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And yeah, if we're all in one basket, we're hard pressed when that is taken away from us. Pamela.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much. The first thing that came to mind, I'll only share that the promise that I'm going to make to myself this week is to keep on remembering to soften my eyes. As much as my whole body, but just softening my eyes and face, then, how I feel about who and what I'm looking at, but also how I feel inside myself is eased. So
Mm.
that's just my thing. I'm going to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I've noticed I store a lot in my face. All of my feelings get
Yeah.
crammed in there. So that idea of softening that is really beautiful. Thank you. Brenda.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Pamela. And we can do it for free many times a day. So I like that. Yeah, one thing that came to mind for me, and I read this recently, and it's become like a bit of a mantra in my mind, is the rested version of you is the better version of you. So I think about that as you're racing through your day, doing a million things, and oh no, you can't take 5 minutes. And it's like, oh, the rested version of me will be the better version. And you think about, my kids are older now, but you think about when they were younger and when you didn't sleep well and you were doing all the extra little things like we all had to do when they were younger. It was so easy to snap. And I kind of can go back to that in my head and go, yeah, you go on vacation and suddenly you're just this new, nice person. So again, bringing more of that into your everyday. And like I said, that that just pops into my head all the time now. And I think just listening for those types of phrases that resonate with you can be the place that your mind goes to, like you were so beautifully reminding us to bring this into your day. I find mantras, I think of them as mind protection for myself and go, yeah, those are my go-to that immediately, it's like the good inner coach. Inner voice, however you want to say it. So just that came to mind when you were going through all the questions. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that. I wrote that one down. The rested version of you is the better version of you. And I just wrote a blog, I think it was two times ago, about slowing everything down. And I really feel and started with a quote that says, "The times are urgent, we must slow down."
Yeah.
Which is so counterintuitive, so countercultural. But yes, because as you said, everybody's going to thank you.
Yeah.
Everything will be better for having slowed down.
Right.
So yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. I'm going to see some things in chat here. And if anybody else wants to pop in, please, questions, shares. It's so good to hear from each other. Marjorie, thank you.
Thank you. This has been super helpful. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. A question popped up in my mind when you were speaking. We asked the question for us to think about what is uniquely mine to do. And that struck me as a really hard question. Like, I don't even know where to begin. So I wanted to ask if you could just talk a little bit more about that or help those of us who are really stumped.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have any better answer than that either. I guess for me, particularly when there are a million things that feel like they need my attention,
Mhm.
and there's so many pressing issues that are calling, that could be personal, could be societal, right? I need to slow down. I need to tune in and say, okay, what is mine to do here? Because I can't do it all. I know that, right? So even if I'm thinking of what causes am I going to speak out for in the world, it may be I need to focus on recovery, mental health, because that's my area of focus, and let somebody else focus on the climate. Like there's so many things, right? Poverty, racism. So what's mine to do? Or within the family, am I thinking, I'm really good at thinking for all the people. So am I spending a lot of energy thinking for my husband, my son? Can I step back and allow them to be the grown people that they are? And, it's for me to ask for what I need or to tell them what I need as opposed to trying to do it for everybody. I don't know if that's
Thanks.
helpful at all.
That's helpful. I also just wanted to share one observation. apart from Elliot, there are no males on the call. And, I have a particular bias about that men have been socialized to take care of themselves and to prioritize their needs. Now, maybe there are other interpretations, which is they don't prioritize it, so they don't even make time for a seminar, or if it's very private to them. But I do, I don't think I was socialized to prioritize myself. It was more sort of this Protestant work ethic, do for others, do good for others, and do serve the public good.
Yep.
But related to what Brenda said earlier, it's hard to do that if you're depleted. But so many of us have not been socialized. And self-care, equals selfishness. And that's what we
Right.
have to unlearn. So thank
Yep.
you.
Absolutely. Yeah, good observation. And I will tell you, the first retreat I was on was a women's retreat, but my first thought was men need this too. Absolutely. We all need this more. Well, what kind of a world would it be if everyone knew how to kind of meet their own needs a little bit better, maybe? I don't know. Cordelia. Thanks.
Thanks so much for doing this, Barb. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate too. There's so many different pieces, but Marjorie, when you're looking back at the what is mine to do, there's such a lovely question. I think that's in there. Part of it is sort of fall in the, where do I do for other people where they could also do it for themselves. But there's also something that came out to me around also taking care of those parts that I can truly only do for myself. Like nobody else can take a nap for me. Like nobody else can laugh for me. And that sort of feels like a rich piece of this as well that I wanted to point. This is also sort of silly part, but there's something that's really sweet to me that I wanted to point towards that. So thanks so much for the question. Really appreciate the sense of slowing down, taking small steps. I've got a mentor that there's a training I went to, so like it's a slightly different thing about slowing down. A training I went to for 2 days. I can't remember what the training was about at all. The only thing I remember is the trainer at one point started like recognize that they were, moving, the slide, they were pushing towards lunch or something. They needed to get through their slides. They're really starting to, and they stopped themselves and said out loud to themselves in front of 150 people, when I feel like I need to move, when I feel like I need to speed up, that means I need to slow down. I watch them take a breath and then reorient. And it was like, that's the only piece I took from the entire training. And it's beautiful. So
That's beautiful.
Appreciate me pointing towards that as well. Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Patricia. Where'd you go?
Hi everybody.
There you are.
I just wanted to share something that just came to me and said share it, because sometimes when we share it, it makes it true for me, more true for me. And sharing with others, saying it out loud, and that is for me, I'm familiar with people suggesting or learning about or trying to practice this type of practice of settling oneself before going to sleep. But for me, due to having incredibly distressful sleeping patterns and or maybe nightmares or even disrupted sleep, that it might be very important for me to begin my day with this as well, to take inventory. And like in particular, when you were talking about this laying on my belly and taking 3 minutes with my eyes closed, and just I can really see that would change my whole way of entering my day, where so many days what I do is this is how I'm starting my day, and I spend the whole day trying to make it right, trying to settle, when perhaps this might be something to be, just even being mindful of that for me might be very helpful to start my
Great
day
idea.
with that being self-care.
Beautiful idea. Thank you for giving voice to that. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say to you all who are facilitators, you know, I offered this to our last group after we finished our 16 weeks. We did a couple of sessions around self-care, and what they said was, this is really needed after we're taking in so much information. This is like the warm hug that helps me know how to go on in life. So I think I'm so grateful for CMC FFC for letting us bring this in and explore these concepts, and hopefully we can continue to support others in this as well. I did put in the chat my website and a couple of retreats that I have coming up. There's a mini retreat on this coming Sunday called Finding the Will in the Way, which I've been calling Finding the Hope Within for the past few months, and that felt a little too, I don't know, ambitious. So scaled it back, but it's just a couple hours of this kind of stuff, but also we do some grief movement, which is another great resource for you, is grief yoga, Paul Denniston. Been here because he gives us ways to move, to shift from struggle and powerlessness into empowerment. It's been really powerful for me beyond just the contemplative thinking, talking stuff. So, all right, we've got a few more minutes here. Anybody else want to share anything? And want to have your promise or your permission witnessed? Share a self-care practice you're going to try out this coming week? If not, it can be done early. Oh, Marjorie. Oh, I see Cordelia and Marjorie. So we'll go Marjorie and then Cordelia, because that's the order I saw you. Sorry.
Well, this is an embarrassing one. I am truly hooked on my phone, and I read a lot late at night, and so it's not all garbage. But I mean, I tell my husband, well, I'm reading a New Yorker article, or I'm reading the Atlantic Monthly, but I'm still reading in bed with the light. So I made a promise to myself to turn my phone off 2 hours before bedtime 3 times in the next week. So it's very specific, because I really do want to change the habit, and it's been a difficult habit to even tweak in the slightest. I'm pretty hooked on it. So that's mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and pay attention to how you feel, because there are practices that I have that people are like, whoa, you must be really dedicated. I'm like, no, I do it because it works.
Mhm.
I do it because it helps me. Like I have done morning pages journaling for 11 years now, almost not missing a single morning, which is a Julia Cameron 3 pages brain dump thing. I do it because it works. It helps me process my life. It helps me get out of my head. I
Well,
even
I
did it the
also,
day after my son passed, which I never thought I would do.
but you did. Wow, that's impressive. I also want to be reading more books. And so there are only so many hours in the day. So if I'm reading my phone, I'm not reading the books I want to read. So I'm going to
Good
give it a try.
noticing. Love it. Thank you. Delia?
I bought on a whim a month or two ago, a month or a year long access to a really goofy dance video series thing. And I feel so stupid when I do it, but it is so much fun. So my goal is just one time, 10 minutes or less, one time this next week. That's it.
I like how you said 10 minutes or less, because often we say at least 10 minutes, and then we actually are putting that pressure on us that it's got to be more. So you could do more if you decide, but set yourself low bars, so low that they feel ridiculous. Like it feels like this isn't enough. Those are the kind of goals you want to start with, because you can always do more. All right, thank you all. We are right on time here. Judy's going to go to see Funny Girl. Yay. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for taking this on. And you can unmute and say goodbye if you'd like, or